Now, what would happen if you had a young, hot movie director coming off of two major studio blockbusters, and the studio of this movie employed two young, visionary, underground cartoonists to adapt that movie into a comic book? Well, the results might surprise you, and that's the topic for today. I'm Taylor from Taylor Talks Comics. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I'm getting closer and closer to 2,000 subscribers, and I really want to get there, and I need your help. Today, though, we're going to be talking about the 1941, The Illustrated Story by Rick Veitch and Steve Bissette. And I promise you want to watch this video. This is one of the wildest comics and wildest behind-the-scenes stories in comics that I am aware of. But 1941 was the movie that Steven Spielberg was producing and directing, written by Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis of Back to the Future fame. So you have Steven Spielberg coming off of Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, trying to do 1941, written by the guys that will eventually do Back to the Future. In the movie, you have an ensemble cast that has Dan Aykroyd, Jim Belushi, and it just, the whole thing is just a recipe for a genius work, right? Well, the movie, as it was being made, they were keeping things very close to the vest. They didn't want things leaking out. They didn't. Steven Spielberg, like I said, was one of the biggest kahunas in Hollywood at the time. Like, he was the it director, in which he would maintain for a number of years. So the next project he was working on, he was trying to keep close to the vest, and even hid things from the cartoonists working on the illustrated story. Stephen Bissette and Rick Veitch met with the studio to try to get material to compile for an adaptation, and the studio was trying to give them, at first what they were offering them was the opportunity to sit in a room while they flashed stills of the movie on a projection in order for them to sketch down and then go and write the story. They weren't even offering them a shooting script. So they had like almost nothing to work with, and the studio executives or somebody from the studio was telling them, we're afraid if we give you too much, you're going to take this down to Time magazine and leak everything this movie's about, which Bissette and Veitch were aghast at this proposition that they would maybe even try to ruin the project of any kind, because this was brand new. So Stephen Bissette and Rick Veitch were coming out of the Joe Kubert School. They were two of the first graduates of that school, that very prestigious school for comic book arts, and they were both very much into the underground comic scene. Think of guys like R. Crumb, S. Clay Wilson, Spain Rodriguez of the Zap comics of the 60s. They were both big fans of those. So they were cut from a certain cloth that was ripe for this product. If you watch 1941, the movie, it is much lambasted today for being one of Spielberg's flops. It didn't do so hot at the blockbuster in comparison to Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, but it wasn't a failure. It still made some money back. But in terms of the expectations, again, Spielberg was this massive name. So the expectations for the comic were also very similar. But Steve Bissette and Rick Veitch were young cartoonists with a lot of ideas. And when you look at this comic, which I'm going to put under the microscope here in a little bit, I promise you, because you're going to want to see this. The insides of this comic are unlike things that I've seen in comics even today. Like, this is a revolutionary stuff that is wild in this comic. I can't believe that this comic isn't talked about enough, or talked about more. But they didn't have a lot to go off of. I guess eventually Rick Veitch was able to come across a shooting script that they're able to come, and work with Alan Asherman, who was the writer on, I guess, on the first parts of it. Steve Bissette in an interview with Cartoonist Kayfabe mentioned that Rick Veitch pretty much wrote the last third of it on his own because Alan Asherman was struggling with deadlines. But Rick Veitch and Steve Bissette would eventually go on, after this project, to go and work with Alan Moore on Swamp Thing and the revolutionary run for DC Comics. And if you're familiar with that run, you know what these cartoonists are capable of when it comes to inventive layouts and all that stuff. So anyways, to roll it back, the Steven Spielberg came across the comic book. It was released. The comic book was released. Well, I don't actually know the date of the release. The movie came out in December of 1979, and the comic book was released. It just says 1979, so I'm not sure if it was the same month or not. But I do know that Steven Spielberg wrote a letter into Heavy Metal magazine, because this was put out by Heavy Metal magazine and Pocketbooks. And the letter was written in November of 1979, and I just want to read part of that letter to you. All right, this letter is addressed to Julie Simmons from Steven Spielberg. Julie Simmons at the time was the editor of Heavy Metal Books, so she's the editor of this project. Dear Julie, I've had the chance to further examine the 1941 Heavy Metal book, and I've found many aspects of the book disturbing. I feel I was misled by the black and white proofs sent to me prior to this publication. The presentation in living color does not represent the intentions of myself, the writers, or anyone connected with 1941. All of us find the artwork and content to be a savage representation of an otherwise light comedy about those times. Beyond that, it is off-putting, disgusting, and terribly racist. Heavy Metal has portrayed our film as a bestial, cannibalistic, Hieronymus Bosch nightmare. There's nothing wrong with bestiality, cannibalism, or Hieronymus Bosch when it accurately reflects the nature of the subject matter. On the sweeter side, we take our hats off to you, your two artists. We all seem to agree on one thing. They are ruthlessly talented, though demented. So that was Spielberg's thoughts on how 1941 the comic turned out. But again, before I flip the camera around and show you this comic under the microscope, I just want to implore where the Veitch and Bissette are coming from. They're coming from being fans of underground comics, and they're also don't have all the subject matter of the movie. They have not seen the movie. They have a shooting script, which rumor has it wasn't even exactly how the movie we saw on screen came out, because Dan Aykroyd and Jim Belushi, these SNL cast members, wanted to improvise some of their lines and whatnot. So the shooting script didn't even end up what was on camera at the end. So you don't have a lot to work with. And also, Veitch and Bissette were, again, young, starving cartoonists. They were working on this while in a cabin with no running water, out in the woods. One of them, allegedly or admittedly, was walking around the woods throughout the day in between drawing pages on taking some shrooms. So there might have been some recreational hallucinogenics involved with this comic, which maybe makes sense for what you see at the final product. But otherwise, this is a wild comic. I love everything about it and how it turned out, and I think more people need to take a look at it. And I think if you've never seen this or never heard about this project, you need to keep watching the video to check it out. But let's flip the camera around and take a look at 1941, the illustrated story. All right, let's take a look at this wild comic. So this is a cover you have here. 1941, the illustrated story, Steve Bissette, Rick Veitch, adapted by Alan Asherman, introduction by Steven Spielberg. That introduction, I think, was written much earlier than he had seen the final product, but it's based on the Columbia Pictures Universal Studios comedy. And here's the back cover here. You'll see it as signed or signature by Creative Burnouts, 1979. That's a signature I've seen on some other Bissette Veitch products. So I think that's kind of like their, not an imprint, but their handle, I guess. And it is a wraparound cover, as you can see. Try to get the glare off my lights there so you can see it in all of its glory. And then you open this thing up, and right away, the end papers have a great scene to it. So that from the moment you open this comic, you're instantly thrown into the picture, into what's going on here. And you can already see some of the things that are foreshadowing of what you're going to see in the rest of the comic. You see this up close of John Belushi with some collage images here. You see his signature of Bissette and Veitch. And then here is the title picture, which I love too because it has all these stamps on it. Secret by the Order of Japanese Imperial Navy. So the story of 1941, if you've not seen the movie, is this takes place 6 or 7 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor. And the idea is that the Japanese are now going to try to attack America inland in Hollywood. And that's kind of like the impetus of the movie, and it is a comedy. So here is the introduction by Steven Spielberg. He looks much happier and jovial about this project in this image. In the letter he's depicting here is very jovial. It's very making fun of himself kind of thing about the project and how much money they spent on it, and all written in September 1979 before the movie is released. So he has no idea what the results of the movie are going to be. And this is drawn by Erwin Hasen. So this is actually not Veitch or Bissette. And then here's the indicia with some more, and I just love this. So this car is driving through, and the newspaper's flying off the road, and then it adds some artwork onto the title page. There's no wasted space throughout this entire comic. There's nothing left to ever bored you from anything. Like, everything is going to be absolutely entertaining. Now, this next page I cannot show off. I have to be kind of careful of the other imagery here, because if you're familiar with, okay, yeah, I'll cover that one too. If you're familiar with the movie, it starts off with a naked girl running through on the beach and jumps into the water, and then this Japanese submarine scoops her up basically out of the water. So that's the first thing I'm trying to cover up, some of those images so I don't get kicked off YouTube. Which, excuse me, some of the savage and racist imagery is what you're going to see here. So you have all these very caricature, racist images of Japanese characters. Even this lady screaming this derogatory word towards the Japanese. But again, it's like that collage element. The coloring on this comic was all done with colored pencils and watercolors, I believe. And then it's all pieced together with just a bunch of collage images, and none of the pages are laid out the same. Steve Bissette is on record saying that he hates the 9-panel grid, 6-panel grid. He hates any sort of grid. So he likes to lay his pages out very open, something that you would see in his Swamp Thing artwork. So, and I'm not just passing over like the racist imagery. I'll get to that in just a second, because I'm sure some people are like aghast right now, thinking like, how can you even support this comic book? But so now we have John Belushi here, his character here. And it's funny if you watch the movie and then seeing how they adapt the scenes, because again, they had not seen the movie themselves when they were doing this. They'd seen film stills and read the script, and that was it. So it's almost an accomplishment how accurate they get some of these scenes. I do love just like this almost Mad Magazine style of like cartooning on the edges of the paper that have nothing to do with the scene itself. I mean, I guess it is a kind of the mascot of the restaurant they're going to, but nothing to do with the scene itself. It's just, again, filling the page with more cartooning. Like, you can read this comic, I bet you, 100 times and still find new things about the artwork and what's going on here. And just the style of the characters, the way they're drawn and things. Like I said, these guys were huge fans of like R. Crumb and S. Clay Wilson and Spain Rodriguez and the Zap guys of the Underground comics. So you can see that style definitely playing through into here. And I'd be shocked if they weren't huge fans of Mad Magazine as well. So flipping to get the next page. So again, totally different layout. Again, you get some of these collage elements where you just get these random like famous people. And I've read that a lot of these are famous actors and people from the year 1941, around that time period, that they were putting in here, which is a great way to depict the time period, because you can do that in movies with the costumes and the cars and the technology and the settings and everything like that. A little bit harder to do in a comic. I guess you can base the artwork around all those same things, but I like the added piece that they added these collage elements of real people from magazine clippings or whatever of that same time period. Like, I think that's Lucille Ball. And then that looks like, is that like the lady off of the Hershey Kisses jar? I don't know. There's so many things in here that I'm just like, oh, what is that? What is that? So, so this scene right here is, this waiter here is trying to go to the big ball with these girls to pick up his date, to his dream girl, if you will. So he goes to this dress shop to pick up a zoot suit, which is a totally different suit than he ends up in the movie. But that's his job, but he doesn't have the money to pay for it. So they bring this air raid siren, leading into the panic of what's going on here. So one thing this movie is depicting is the panic of war and how America can kind of be like a little bit of a warmongering country at times. And again, this was done in 1979, so it's done 30 plus years removed from Pearl Harbor. But it's playing into that that scare and the hysteria around war and the attacks. I mean, the attacks on Pearl Harbor were obviously horrific and scary for Americans, so it's kind of playing into that, but for comedic effect. So they have this air raid siren because they know it's going to get everyone to freak out, run out of the store, and then they can walk off with the suit. And they do it, and everyone's screaming, again, these derogatory words for Japanese people. So when there is racist imagery in this comic, but in the movie as well, I mean, they are saying similar things. I think the depiction of Japanese people in the movie, it's kind of done in a two-dimensional way. I don't want to cross the barrier of saying it's racist on itself. But again, I'm only just a white guy that lives in a suburb of the Midwest America. So I can't speak from a point of actual knowledge of what it feels like to be one of the minorities that is marginalized and depicted in these comics or movies. So again, just take that opinion for itself. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be offended by any of this. I'm just saying what I think the writers and artists and everything are going for. So if in the movie, if you watch it, I'll just try to keep flipping through. Oh, real quickly here. So this guy, the guy in the zoot suit, the waiter, he encounters a soldier in the restaurant, and they kind of a bullying back and forth. And in this scene, he gets all this manure thrown onto him. And then check this out. It looks like Veitch and Bissette invented the poop emoji. This guy, he's stuck in this pile of poop, and it looks very much like the poop emoji with the eyeballs. Just an interesting aspect to it. But, so yeah, the Japanese people in the movie and the comic are not depicted in a endearing way. But I would argue no one is depicted in a endearing way, not even the Americans, because the Americans are depicted as either sex-crazed maniacs, warmongering maniacs, or just complete buffoons. So I think that was the idea that Spielberg had for the movie, was that it was kind of a satirical commentary on the social and political aspects of war and how Americans will view other countries and people from other countries in kind of a not so great light. So what I'm trying to get at here, like, here's a great spread to pause on while I talk. Again, all the little collage elements of here, just absolutely amazing. Even using like some product stuff from the era, like Ovaltine, just amazing stuff. Okay, so what I'm trying to get at here is that the comic book and the movie, I think, are supposed to be viewed from the lens of how Americans react to things. So if the Japanese people are not depicted in the greatest light, it's because that's how Americans were viewing them at the time. I don't think that's how Spielberg viewed them. I don't think that's how Steve Bissette or Rick Veitch viewed them when they're making this. I think that was kind of Rick Veitch and Steve Bissette interpreting that and putting it in here. And that's why there's kind of the racist caricatures in this comic, because that's, again, how Americans were viewing the Japanese people at the time. That's my analyst. That's the way I viewed it as a reader going into this. I could be totally way off. I have no idea. I'm not going to sit here and say, this is what should happen or whatever. But again, the inventive and crazy layouts here, I absolutely love. You have the scene here with the two guys stuck on the Ferris wheel. One guy's afraid of heights, so he's throwing up all over himself. And I just love the panel layout of the Ferris wheel if you're looking at it head on coming around, because that's going to play a part later on in the story. Here's like a fake ad, which I'm not going to read for YouTube reasons. Again, just like the collage elements they're using. Like, I would like to see how they laid this out, if they thumbnailed this or what magazines they were clipping from. everything about this is so inventive and wild to me that I want to see how, and you don't even quite know the division of labor between Bissette and Veitch. It's not like Bissette was the penciler or Veitch was the inker and colorist or anything like that. Like, there's pages where you'll say, like, oh, that looks like a Rick Veitch figure or face that he drew. That looks like a Steve Bissette. So it literally was just these two guys, almost in like an Eastman layered approach on Turtles, where they're both just doing everything and just taking turns on pages. It's kind of like a jam comic. I love this too. Like, you have, again, John Belushi screaming into these panel layouts of what's going on here. Because the guy on the plane here, again, the Americans on this movie are all sex crazed or, you know, crazy hysteria, warmongers. And this guy's been trying to get this girl on a plane because she only ever consummates the relationship if they're on an airplane. So that's what's going on in this scene here. And then there's an attack, and they assume, again, wrongly, but they assume it's the Japanese people attacking them. The whole thing is, I think there's even this catchphrase spoken out throughout the movie repeatedly by Dan Aykroyd's character. Let me see if I can find because they do it in the comic too. Oh, right here. If there's one thing I can't stand to see is it's Americans fighting Americans. So, especially now in this darkest of hours when democracy itself is threatened by hordes of barbaric enemies. If we must fight, let it be united, let it be together. So that's like one thing is constantly repeating. It's like, one thing I hate to see is Americans fighting Americans. That's what's happening throughout the whole book, because in the movie, throughout the hysteria and the craziness that's going on, they end up fighting each other more than they are fighting the quote unquote enemy. Dumbo's in here because there's a big scene where in the movie theater where they're watching Dumbo. I love this Coca-Cola Santa, but he says some not so great things. This plane crashes in the La Brea tar pits, and I love this because Steve Bissette is the cartoonist that did Tyrant. He's a self-professed huge dinosaur nut. He said he's loved dinosaurs since he was a little kid. So I love this, and I just imagine this is probably I can almost guarantee this was drawn by Steve Bissette. Oh, that looks like the Michelin baby, probably, in there. So I love that, too, like all the little ads. Here's, like, propaganda posters. Adolf was a painter. So, obviously, this is a pro-Nazi poster, probably. So, again, they're depicting the time period through collage elements of advertisements. And these layouts are insane. Here's like a monster element, which Steve Bissette and Rick Veitch are both horror fans. Definitely Steve Bissette, who has in recent years written a lot about horror movies and the horror genre. There's John Belushi on a motorcycle, which is a great image. Always love to see a good, cool motorcycle in a comic book. Just absolutely insane layouts and coloring. The coloring treatment is amazing too, because like I said, the only thing I've heard Bissette say they used was color pencils and watercolors. And I can't even see, I was talking about the division of labor between Veitch and Bissette. I can't even see the division of coloring between color pencils and watercolors all the time. Like, that definitely looks like marks of a color pencil on that image right there. But it's just absolutely mind-blowing, insane comic. And I do want to say that this isn't that hard to find. So here's a scene where the Ferris wheel gets knocked off its track and actually wheels down off the dock. And I love the way they depicted this. Like, it looks like a Looney Tunes cartoon. Just rolling off the deck. But this isn't that hard to find. You'll find copies on eBay for like $20-$30. But actually, I found there's copies on Rick Veitch's website, which I'll link down below, for like $12.95, I think, or something like that, and he'll sign them. So if you want to get your hands on this, which I think you absolutely do. Is that the same image on the front end papers? Oh, it is. Okay. Then you can find copies pretty easily. But yeah, this is put out by Heavy Metal. It's 1941. It's insane. It's an insane comic. I want to hear your thoughts down below about this comic. If you've read this, your thoughts on Rick Veitch and Steve Bissette. They're two of my favorite artists in comics history. So there's definitely going to be more videos on them. I've been kind of going down a Bissette Veitch rabbit hole lately. So look forward to that on my channel. Please subscribe, though. I'm getting closer and closer to 2,000 subscribers. I need your help. So if you're already subscribed, the way you can help is to give the video a thumbs up and comment down below. That engagement puts the video in front of more eyeballs on YouTube as a suggested video for people that aren't subscribed. And if you want to put a little bit more time into it, I'd appreciate it. Just share this channel and this video on your social media. That might get more people to check it out as well. But thank you so much for watching this. 1941, it's an insane story. It's an insane comic. Check you guys later and read more comics.